Let's be honest, pastoral leadership is one of the toughest gigs in education. It is absolutely relentless. So today, we're skipping the abstract high-level theories. Instead, we're going to take a really practical look at the work of leadership guru Ken Blanchard and see how his simple, powerful tools can be applied directly to the stuff we face every single day in a boarding house. So, let's jump right in. All right, first things first. If you think leadership is all about big speeches or major crisis decisions, well, you've probably never run a boarding house. In our world, leadership isn't loud. It's forged in those quiet, consistent, day in, day out interactions. It's in these small moments where your culture is really, truly built. Yeah, does this list look familiar? Of course it does. This is the job, right? It's that cheerful good morning, even when you're tired. It's the quiet check-in on homework. It's that 10th conversation about being on time. We've all been there. And, just as important, it's having a quiet word with a colleague who looks like they're at the end of their rope. See, these aren't distractions from the real work. These are the real work. And that's the whole point, really. Our impact is just the sum of all these tiny, intentional moments. And that's exactly why the work of Ken Blanchard is so perfect for us. His ideas aren't some complicated corporate strategy. No, they're simple, they're human, and they're tailor-made for an environment where consistency and genuine care are literally everything. So, this brings us to Blanchard's first huge idea, and it's a real mindset shift: servant leadership. The idea is to basically take that classic leadership pyramid and just flip it completely upside down. It's about putting the needs of your students and your staff front and center. Just imagine this for a second. What if this one question, how can I help you succeed, was the engine behind every conversation you had? It changes the whole dynamic, doesn't it? You go from being an authority figure to a supporter, from a controller to an enabler. In a boarding house, that shift isn't just a nice to have, it is the absolute bedrock of trust. Let's just break that down a bit. You know, a controlling style, that relies on your job title, on hierarchy. But let's be real, students and staff can see right through that. What they actually respond to is your presence. They respond to fairness, and most of all, to trust. A serving approach gets that. It puts building trust above everything else, instead of just enforcing rules for the sake of having rules. So what does this actually look like on a Tuesday afternoon? Well, it means supporting a staff member before you correct them. It means you're actively looking for ways to clear roadblocks for them, to make their jobs just a little bit easier. And, this is a big one, it's about you being the calm in the storm. That's how you show everyone that you're there to serve the community, not just manage it. Okay, now for what is probably Blanchard's most famous idea, the 1-minute manager. And I get it, the name sounds a bit like a cheesy gimmick, but trust me on this. In the absolute beautiful chaos of a boarding house, this is one of the most practical tools you will ever find for creating clarity and positive energy. You know, the genius of this idea is its simplicity. In a job where you barely have time to breathe, let alone think, this gives you a simple, consistent framework. It's designed to stop those little misunderstandings that, as we all know too well, can easily spiral into major dramas by the end of the day. It really just boils down to two things. That's it. First, setting super clear 1-minute goals so everybody, and I mean everybody, knows what a win looks like. And second, making a real conscious effort to give 1-minute praisings, to actually catch people doing things right. It creates this amazing positive loop. So let's make this real for a boarding house. This means having simple, shared expectations for what happens in the morning. No confusion. It means explaining the why behind routines, not just enforcing them. And for your staff, it means every single person on your team knows exactly what a good duty looks like. That kind of clarity just cuts down on so much conflict and burnout. And then you have the other side of the coin, which is just so important. Our job kind of forces us to hunt for problems, right? To see what's going wrong. Blanchard says, flip that on its head. Make it your mission to notice the student who quietly helps a friend without being asked. To actually acknowledge the kid who is always on time. To give that quick, specific, well done to a staff member who just navigated a really tricky situation. That, right there, is how you build a positive culture, 1 minute at a time. Okay, let's move on to what might be Blanchard's most sophisticated idea, but also maybe the most crucial one for us in boarding. Situational leadership. This is all about learning to adapt your leadership style to fit the incredibly diverse needs of all the people in your care. I mean, this is the fundamental truth of our work, isn't it? Every single student, every staff member, they all come with a different background, a different personality, different needs. A rigid one-size-fits-all approach to leadership, it's not just going to be ineffective, it is guaranteed to backfire. Just think about it for a second. That brand new, nervous boarder who's missing home, they need a ton of direction, tons of support. You're very hands-on. But what about that independent senior who's about to graduate? They need you to trust them, to give them autonomy, low direction. Same goes for a new staff member. They need guidance and support. Your style has to flex depending on the person and the situation. Now, let's be really clear here. This is not about being inconsistent. In fact, it's the opposite. It's about being consistently fair by giving people what they actually need to thrive. Using careful judgment is a sign of strong leadership. Hiding behind rigid rules and calling it fairness, well, that's often just an excuse to avoid the real, hard work of leading people. So let's pull all these threads together. Why is this stuff, this human-centered, relational approach, so foundational? Why is it more than just a nice idea? Well, because at the end of the day, it comes down to this simple truth. We are not just managing a system. We're not just enforcing rules. We are creating homes. And you can't build a real home on a foundation of spreadsheets and regulations. Homes are built on relationships, on empathy, on a true sense of belonging. And when you really embrace Blanchard's principles, this is the world you create. Your leadership stays human. You value the relationships you have more than your own ego. You find that perfect balance between having structure and having real empathy. And ultimately, you build a culture where everyone, students and staff, feels truly supported, not just managed. And, for those of you working in an international school, this is even more true. It's 10 times more critical. When your students are literally thousands of miles away from home and your staff are carrying that incredible emotional load, well, these principles aren't optional extras. They are the absolute foundation you build everything on. I want to leave you with this thought. The very best boarding leaders, they're rarely the loudest person in the room. Their leadership is steady. It's built piece by piece on real relationships, and every single small action they take is intentional. It's designed to serve and support the community they care so deeply about. So here's my challenge to you. Thinking about everything we've just talked about, what is one small, intentional thing you can do today? A 1-minute praising, a moment of servant leadership. What's one thing you can do? Because that, right there, is where the real work of building an amazing community begins. Thanks for your time.